What's up, guys? My name is Jake, and welcome to The Last Word, a show which is sort of like a director's commentary where I sort of give my freehand commentary on some of my older videos, where I kind of want to just expand on some things inside the videos and talk about things that you probably didn't know about, some interesting stories, and some more information regarding the subject matter. So let's go ahead and travel back to 2017 and take a look at Walt Disney World and Hurricane Irma. All right, here we are. And it's Fearmonger Time, baby. I went through a sort of a montage of clips showing the vast amount of fear that was in, I think, everyone in Florida at that time. It was sort of a weird time. This whole video was really sort of just a coincidence of epic proportions for me. And I'll kind of dive into that in a sec, but I'll go ahead and say that Florida in this time, this was 2017, September of 2017, and it was a Category 5 hurricane out in the Caribbean, and it was, I think, just wide panic with everyone. Like, I remember being in Florida, there was absolutely no water, little food, actually. I remember going to Publix, and which is the local grocery store in Florida, and there was no water. People were hoarding water. People were filling up bathtubs, as you should in a natural disaster situation. However, to the extent of where the governor had to step in and like subsidize water bottles coming in, it was just an insane a moment. The panic and the fear among everyone was very apparent. Just spending time in Florida. Okay, so I found myself in Florida for a particularly interesting reason. I'm not going to dive too deep into the story because it is a very personal thing for me. I may go into it on the podcast because, as depressing as this turned out to be, it was actually quite hilarious now that you look back on it and everything's fine. When you put personal relationships in perspective, it really doesn't matter anymore. So maybe if you are a Patreon member, we may talk about that in an upcoming Patreon podcast. And here's the announcement, the sort of impending announcement of Hurricane Irma. So throughout my life, I've always been terrified of flying, right? And this trip to Florida was actually my first time flying in general. So it was a big moment for me. I went down to Florida, and I knew for a little bit that Hurricane Irma had been forming in the Caribbean. And I wasn't too afraid of it once I went to Florida for the first time, alone, by the way. This is me taking my grand adventure to Florida, and it just so happens that Hurricane Irma was in it. So I stayed at the Spring Hill Suites, which this part was filmed in. So here's what happened. Very, very bizarre, matter of fact. My girlfriend at the time had broken up with me, and I was very, very upset by this. It was just a calamity of just epic proportions crashing down on me all at once. And I was like, well, crap, things are not going very well for me. This sucks. Now I'm alone in this Spring Hill Suites hotel, which was just off Walt Disney World property. And I was thinking to myself, okay, this is not good. I'm all of a sudden alone with a Category 5 hurricane coming to Florida. I don't know what to do. So I was like, if I do a video on this, I can't do it here. It was off property. The Spring Hill Suite, the Spring Hill Suites wasn't really great. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I go to the Disney app. I'm like, how cheap do you think Disney hotels are right now? This is, by the way, the night before, or actually, no, the morning of Hurricane Irma. And I think it so happened like Contemporary was $390 or $390 a night. And I was like, this is the cheapest I've ever seen Contemporary. And screw it, I'm just going to do it. So I booked Contemporary on the night or the morning of the hurricane when it was supposed to hit. And I just took an Uber ride, which you saw a little earlier. And here we are at Contemporary. So it's interesting. Obviously I'm leaving a lot out of the story, and it's a lot more depressing once you hear the entire thing. But maybe, again, if you are a Patreon supporter on the podcast level, that you'll hear it. But yeah, it's quite a story. Anyway, it's interesting because if that series of terrible events never happened, then I never would have went to Contemporary, and in return, I never would have made a video like this. So it all works out, you know. So this was the night of the hurricane, obviously, and I'm at Contemporary. I got a garden wing room, and I traveled over to the Bay Lake Tower to get some shots of this with my Canon 6D. And as I walked over to the tower, it really wasn't bad. I was like, man, is this hurricane really coming? I mean, the winds are not that bad. And then I spend maybe an hour at Bay Lake Tower just getting random shots that I never used other than those two. But here's the walkway that I come back through, and the wind walking back into the Contemporary was unimaginable. I'm from Canada, so I've never experienced wild weather. So when I was in this situation, I was just astounded by how powerful the wind was and how violent it was. I mean, I was totally not expecting, because I had walked across that walkway an hour earlier. That maybe not even an hour, maybe 30 minutes prior. And then I get onto the walkway 30 minutes later, and the wind, I mean, I've never felt gusts like that. I was clinging on to the side of that walkway for my life. I mean, I was terrified at that point. And that's kind of when I realized that, holy, this is something real. This is like a genuine hurricane. And that sort of put me into perspective on how it must have felt for the people who were in the Caribbean, who felt the full brunt of a Category 5 hurricane. Because at this point, when it was slamming into the West Coast and into Central Florida, it was only a Category 3 down to a Category 2. So it really wasn't that bad. It was only, I think, sustained winds, or maybe peaking winds, at around 90 miles per hour. That's what I read or heard somewhere at the time. But here's Contemporary, a very outdoor walking area. So you really had to, Disney hadn't really prepared for something like this, especially how guests would get to and from the main tower. Because to get to the garden wing of which are where I was staying, you would have to go outside into the covered walkway, which, when there's 90 mile per hour winds, the covered walkway wasn't all that useful. Well, it was useful, but it wasn't always that safe. A lot of these shots that people are like, oh my God, Jake, you're risking your life. I really wasn't. It was in a sheltered sort of area just outside the emergency staircases. I think there's 3 of them in the garden wing. So I just sort of took shelter in that little area just outside the emergency staircases. And I like this that sign too. It's like, the winds are too strong. Just stay in your room. Seek shelter. 2 of the monorails were also parked inside the Contemporary, which I found interesting too. It was sort of, they were taking shelter inside the hotel. So they were there for about 2 days, I think. And here's the flickering lights. And Contemporary really shows its age in this video, I think, because it is a building from the 70s. And there's just here and there spots where you see like, okay, well, this is clearly the 70s, because it's not doing all too well. Due to inclement weather conditions, we had to seal this door.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
What the? Sorry, that was my Siri. What? All right, anyway, very professional, Jake. Here's the wet staircase. I think the moisture in the air was so intense that the emergency staircase in Contemporary was just soaking wet. It also didn't help that water was just pouring in through the bottom of that emergency staircase door. Throughout the night, I mean, look at Bay Lake there too on the right. Just the water slamming into the pool. It's insane to see a lake look like that. It looks like the ocean. It looks like a beach, like a rough beach, which I guess it is actually. You see, so this emergency staircase area, I filmed over the course of like 4 hours maybe. I went out there periodically. I went to my room every once in a while, and then I sort of just walked out to see what the situation was, and I filmed it. And here's just one of the crazy shots that I got of a transformer blowing up over in the cast member area. This is actually, if you know Disney at all, that area is actually where the maintenance area is for the boats and the monorail. So that little area there is where the transformer was blowing up, which is really crazy. And I think here is probably the worst of the storm, a shot of the worst the storm ever got, which I had filmed. I love that shot, that hard cut straight into today. It's so good. I'm so happy with how that turned out. Like what a stark contrast between just doom and then, oh, morning, beautiful. It's so great. Yeah, no, it's the damage after the storm wasn't all that extensive. Oh, sorry. Let me finish my point on this too. It's Hurricane Irma. I think by the time the eye reached Orlando, it got to a point where it was not going to be as strong as it would have been when one of the inner bands were hitting the city. So I got to a point where it was to its strongest point, which was around 90 miles per hour, and then it sort of tapered off as it got closer. So I went to bed before the eye reached Orlando, but at that point, it was down to a category 2 or a 1, and it sort of just dissipated into a tropical storm and then went away. I mean, the next day it was pretty much just cloudy skies and a little bit of wind. It was really insane to just see how everything had changed within a matter of like 5 hours. It was really, really quite something. Maybe around 7 hours. Here's the damage that was done. These trees are no longer there, I don't think. Or maybe they did plant new ones, I'm not sure. But Bay Lake Tower actually received quite a bit more damage due to its foliage than Contemporary did, because there's a lot of trees around the courtyard of that area. And for some reason, the staircases, so this was in one of the emergency staircases in the Bay Lake Tower, and it received a lot of just wetness and damage. So a lot of the drywall and paint was sort of disformed from all the wind and I guess the moisture and humidity that got into it. But a lot of the foliage was really messed up. But honestly, and just referring back to the Contemporary Resort, it really wasn't that bad. I mean, for a building, like I said, in the 1970s, built in the 1970s, it showed its age, but the main structure was honestly fine. All the glass was fine, and the rooms held up pretty well. For all things considered, the amount of people who lost power. I mean, I remember talking to Brian and Michael from the Proper People who were living in Central Florida at the time, and they said they had lost power for about, I think, like 2 or 3 weeks. So it was really insane to sort of stay in the Disney area and not have really any effects. I think it flickered once through the entire night, and that was about it. And here's a fun little fact too: the Spring Hill Suites was the area to which the government had been putting elderly people from old folks' homes. So my hotel was just inundated with elderly people, and the entire building, from what I understood, once I returned back there after the Contemporary, from what I understand, the hotel lost power for about 2.5 days. So if I did stay at the Spring Hill Suites, then I probably wouldn't even have been able to make a video or anything about this, because we had lost power, no air conditioning, and there wasn't really an area for me to film things. So it all worked out. It really did. And I'm super happy with how the video came out. But anyway, the video has ended. Thank you all very much for watching this somewhat short Last Word episode. I am working on the documentary right now. It's actually finished. And if you're watching this in its current state right now, this video, then look out for a trailer coming up very soon. And if it has come out, go take a look at the trailer, Closed for Storm. Thank you all so much. I've been really hard at work lately, but I promise brand new, much better videos than this are coming very soon. Thank you all very much for watching. Stay updated on Twitter, and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.